Welcome to another edition of Wheel of Albums. I'm with my brother Adam and our friend Jack. And on camera today, our graphic artist Sydney. I'm Justin. What we do here on Wheel of Albums is we spin a wheel, the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Then we listen to that album for a week. And we get together on this short podcast and let you know if we think it's an album you must hear before you die. This week, Adam spun the wheel. He got Scott Walker's sophomore effort, Scott 2. 1968.
When the Wheel of Albums spit out Scott 2. I had never heard of Scott Walker, and after the first 18 very random, all over the place listens, I had no idea where the Wheel of Albums had taken us to next.
I have heard of Scott Walker before, but never really dove this deep into a Scott Walker solo album. The sun ain't gonna shine anymore. From the Walker Brothers, when he was with that band before he went solo, and he was a teen heartthrob. The Walker Brothers were bigger than the Beatles in 1966 in England. But this is after that. So Scott on his own, this is new to me.
This week's challenge was another record I'd never heard of. It was Scott 2. I didn't know who Scott Walker was. There was a test exchange that he was a crooner of sorts. I didn't even know what decade I was getting into. The wheel controls.
After listening to Scott 2 for 3 times, I've realized that Scott Walker is the Wolverine of crooners. The first song, Jackie, you listen to the first verse of that song and get sucked in. You go, all right, this guy is great. And then he unleashes his adamantium claws and slashes you to death with a line, a cute in a stupid ass way, and you go, whoa, what just happened? This is different.
You could say he was going for Baroque pop. See what I did there? Baroque pop. Enjoy the veal.
So you want to fool somebody into thinking that Scott Walker is a force to be reckoned with. Well, you got to pour a little brandy, maybe pentultimate bottom shelf. So you have a couple drinky poos, then you put on Plastic Palace People. And when he starts with that echo chamber, you can convince him that it's either the brandy messing with his brain or Scott Walker's beautiful singing ability.
So the day's winding down and you're trying to convince your buddies why Scott Walker is a legend with his Baroque style of singing. You're sipping on some scotch and you're putting on Black Sheep Boy. It's nice and subdued and kind of gets the flow going. And you try to convince them, like, listen, this guy is great. Then you throw Jackie on and blow their mind. Case closed. Scott Walker is a legend.
After a few gin and tonics, you go to your buddy, hey, I know you're a big Burt Bacharach fan. Got something for you to hear here. His name's Scott Walker. Just want you to listen to the little Windows of the World and listen to how he hangs on to every syllable for his life. Windows of the World. Then you explain to him, this guy's not from England. He's from outside Cincinnati. But the Brits love him.
So guys, the government does a genetic experiment, basically resulted in Scott Walker. Which artists' DNA do you think were mixed to create such a specimen?
Well, if the government could travel through time like you want, Adam, I'm going to say they went and got Father John Misty, right? He's got sort of a schwarmy type of sense to him like Scott Walker. And then they were like, Father John, we need to teach you the basics. The godfather of Steubenville, Ohio, Dean Martin. And they mixed genetics from Dean and Father John Misty together and came up with what Britain needed. Scott Walker singing Plastic Palace People.
Where Scott Walker came from. It's strange that he was a semi-American citizen that became a British citizen because Britain liked him way better than America did, apparently. But ultimately, he was created in a lab. This was the government did a genetic experiment, and it resulted in creating Scott Walker. The scientists used the DNA of French-Canadian crooner Robert Goulet and the center square himself, Paul Lynde.
I really feel like the government had a time machine and traveled all over, acquire the genetic material needed to create such a specimen as Scott Walker. He kind of has the swagger and sound of Neil Diamond, but looks like a 60s version of Liam Gallagher with his stage presence. And, he just has a scotch of David Bowie's experimental panache to him. Legendary.
When you mix that powerful, rich baritone of Goulet with the witty double entendres of Paul Lynde, you're going to get yourself a Scott Walker, a whole big mess of Scott Walker. Sure, the crooners can croon, but which crooner is handiest with his mitts?
I think Scott Walker, he handles his mitts pretty well, even though if he's in his own world. It's an obvious boring answer, but I would have to go Sinatra. I would not want to be stuck in a room with him. Him showing me his mitts, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Engelbert Humperdinck looks like the Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men. He is silent, but he'd carry an oxygen machine around with you and kill you with it.
It's not Scott Walker. I think the list begins and ends with Roger effing Whittaker. Even if the man had a sore throat, he could bust out the Mexican whistle, hit like 3 or 4 songs right there. You're still going to leave satisfied at a Roger Whittaker concert.
Scott, too, could be looked at as divided into 3 sections. Jacques Brel covers songs in general, and his own compositions. Do you guys have a preference?
Roger Cloven Hoof Whittaker.
With the Brel covers, Jackie and Next sound like you're about to watch an ESPN sports program during the 80s at the beginning of each of those songs, and your ears prickle up and you go, oh, this is going to be different. What's he singing about on Next? What's that all about?
He's singing about gonorrhea and the queer lieutenant. Next. And
the song, The Girls and the Dogs, I mean, that song's just fantastic. The girls are as cold as the Sphinx, always dreaming of minks, they drive you to drink. But the dogs, well, they're only dogs, just wagging their tails as they watch it end.
The Brel covers, don't particularly care for them.
I have to disagree with you here, Jack. The Brel covers to me are the bread and butter on Scott, too. I could have used 12 Brel covers on this album.
Next sounds like a musical number that got cut from a musical that I didn't want to see in the first place. I'll go with the originals, especially because the Amorous Humphrey plug has a small breakdown that reminds me of Look Out, Here Comes Tomorrow by the Monkees. And he does just some studio trickery with Plastic Palace people. So the originals, I'll give him a little bit of credit there for doing that.
Between all his work on Scott, too, I would say I enjoyed all the Brels, couple covers, the Bacharach and the Tim Hardin Black Sheep Boy, and maybe Plastic Palace people. And that's about it.
The entire album's great. It's a good listen, but the Brel covers are on another level.
And apparently he's no Roger Whittaker.
Roger, Mexican Whistle, Whittaker.
When rating all the songs on Scott 2, 1 to 10, me and Adam, with almost identical scores, is 6.3. 3.58 for Jack on a 1 to 10 scale to give Scott 2 a 5.43 rating overall. Our 3 favorite songs belong to the 2 Brel covers at the top, Jackie and The Girls and the Dogs. And then we've got the Tim Hardin Black Sheep Boys, our 3rd favorite song.
Roger, the middle, fiddle, Whittaker. Now we've come to the part of the show where we have to decide if you must listen to this record before you die. Easy call for me. Nope. Don't listen to it. Get yourself some Goulet on the turntable. Get yourself some Humperdinck. Anything, really. Scott Walker doesn't bring much to the party. And whatever he brought to the party, nobody liked. You know, it just got thrown away, or people just said, oh, you know, thanks, Scott, for bringing that dip. It was fantastic. But it really wasn't. Do not listen to this album before you die.
Scott 2. Do you need to hear it before you die? Absolutely. For any reason, to hear the Brel covers of Jackie, Next, and The Girls and the Dogs. The rest of the album's strong. It's enjoyable to listen to. The end is a little, gets a little bit boring, I guess, at the end. But man, when those Brel covers come on, you just get shipped to another level. Black Sheep Boy is a great song as well. Scott 2. An absolute yes for me this week.
All right, well, I guess I'm the deciding vote on this, and this is tough. There is another Scott Walker on the wheel, Scott 4, and that album is full of original compositions. And me not being a big fan of his original compositions here, I am going to say yes. Scott 2 is an album you should hear before you die. I think you should listen to Scott Walker at least once in your life before you die. And without going through his whole discography, let's just go for now and say this is the album you should listen to. Jack, we're running short on time. Why don't you spin the wheel for album number 20?
Hey, let's give the old wheel a spin now. All right. Wheel's going, and it has landed on, looks like we're headed to the Church of the KLF. It's going to be The White Room by the KLF.
All right, for Adam and Jack, I'm Justin. Thanks again for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz if you can. In the meantime, let's get back to Roger Whittaker.
And back to the topic at hand. Why is Roger Whittaker handy with his mitts? If you see a lot of pictures of Roger Whittaker, he's always wearing a hat. It just makes him look a little scrappier. He wears that English driver's cap. And I think Roger Whittaker probably carries a straight razor in his hip pocket. Look out. Roger, I killed Boxcar Willie with a poisoned hobo pie in 1974. Whittaker.